Hello and welcome to the Creative Community Podcast. This is the show where we interview independent creatives and creative organisations. I am your host, Claire Beardraz. I am a creative freelancer, spoken word performer and creative arts therapist. And for today's episode, I am joined by the wonderful Michelle Peterkin-Walker, also known as Akoma Arts. Hello, Michelle. Thank you for joining us today.
Good afternoon, lovely, and thank you for having me today.
Of course. So, obviously I just mentioned there that you're also known as Akoma Arts. I was wondering, just as a little introduction, if you could tell our listeners and viewers a bit about what you do and what is Akoma Arts?
Akoma Arts, I think that's one of my incarnations of myself. I started in 2016, and basically it's digital artist. So I do a bit of photography, graphic design, and I just create images and representations, I guess, of African people in the diaspora, I always say. Because I wanted to do some positive images, I've also add to those collection of positive images and just things that I like to see, in that way. So started off by making greeting cards and doing framed art, and some people ask me for some bespoke pieces, but they'll see, so I'll create them, and just go through doing images that kind of say something to me, and if they relate to other people or do you have some resonance with other people, all good. It's in that way. Nice. So that's really Akoma Arts.
Okay, and so that's more like digital art, would you say then?
Yeah, digital art and stuff. So I still go out and shoot photography and the images that I make, and then I'll just go back to the computer and manipulate them in some way. There's some way that I still do some illustrations, I'm not the great fine artist like my sister, who's really, really high quality and stuff like that, but not to knock anyone's quality, it's all relevant, and mine's still relevant too. She's a great portrait artist, so I'm more of a doodler and stuff. So when you can create abstract pieces, so I like to do some abstract work. So even when some of the cards that I've produced, you'll see some images which are some of my illustrations. So I'll still do that. So it's just finding different ways to express, even with the projects that I've been involved in. One of the ones that I did called the Dikenga workshops, working with healing stones and crystals and making these cosmogram shapes, and having like an installation piece in Granby Winter Garden. So it's even with myself, I'm always trying to play with different forms, and learn and explore. I guess I'd say I'm self-taught in that way. I didn't do any particular set studies for it. It was just really about what I do to express. I guess it's because I've come from a background in video, so that's why I say Akoma Arts is the 2016 incarnation of myself. I used to go under the guise of Sojourner Productions, for which I'd make like videos and stuff, mainly documenting the community activities, things, just to give us some kind of not just a representation, but just to have a documentation of some of the things that were going on at the time, because you have all these events and activities and we didn't always document them, so that's why I got into doing that, so we could still put videos up on TV of our own self, especially when digital technology came about in Boston in the late 90s and stuff. From then it was just like, it made it accessible. So it was really about, we can put something on our TV and see ourselves, and it was the power of seeing yourself and your things what was really the driving force. But I didn't really see that much as an artist, like people say video art. I didn't really look at it in them ways. I just thought like documentation. Though I did make a few documentaries and stuff like that, looking at culture, heritage. And I guess that's always been my vein, being who I am, just incorporating that culture and heritage into whatever I do. Hence the names, Sojourner Productions and Akoma Art, which is like a Ghanaian word meaning heart, and I use a symbol of creativity, and stuff like that. So that's kind of me.
Nice. I think it's something really important as well about, like saying, documenting things, taking photographs. It's like preventing that erasure of our history that is often so sort of trying to be done constantly. I mean, from the past into the present, and it's like, I feel like as time's going on, it's like more difficult for people to try and do that. I mean, even when you look back, like even before the 80s, and you see pictures from the civil rights movement, and you see that they're always shown in black and white to give the impression that it happened ages ago, and that was like so long ago. But in reality,
it's very real. It's very close. And I always say, to be honest, maybe because I've reached not just because I've reached me half a century. Yes, I'm half a century, 50 now. But it kind of puts a context to things. So because I used to shoot video films and I had all this footage, when I found it, the importance of it grew. And suddenly when I was picking up this and picking up certain things, and that's why that project where I run Your Lens on L8, which was literally gathering a range of different video footage and showing different activities and people and the creativity that was going on from the late 90s in Liverpool 8 and stuff, and it was just massive. And even it kind of blew me away looking at what we'd done, and I only had a small segment of it. And even now, which I have to give due respect, and I always give the shout out to Gopal Bedi, may you rest in peace, because even the significance of what we've just done recently, and we all just sat down on a talk, much like we're doing now, clearly, and Gopal's passed away, so it was nice to give him honours and some respect for the work that he'd done with Catalyst and Slav, and now for even more so, I'm like, look at this footage again. So I the importance of it was even more weighed on me, and it keeps happening as we go older, and it's why I think, where's this archive going to sit, where we're going to put it? So there's all these conversations I'm going to be having around archives and how can we find it, how can we keep our documentation. I saw a wonderful picture what Nikki Blaze flagged up, you know, where they were showing all these breakers and hip hop boys, and she was saying, oh yeah, someone had put it in a magazine saying it was New York, but it's Upper Parliament Street with Richard Braithwaite and the rest of the boys on it, because it looked like the brownstones, and I'm just like, wow, so this is really important. When I seen it, even if we weren't aware of it, even for our kids to see, that's my dad, that's my granddad, if you still got living family members connected. So in that way, I think it's really important. So I know Leroy Cooper does a lot of work, you know, about the documentation, the photographs, when he throws them up. But it's the same thing now. What you're doing, what everyone's doing now, in 10 and 15 years, that becomes our history, and it's all a lived and relevant history, and we all still want to see it, you know. So this is why I say it becomes really poignant, you know, and I'm always about celebrating us and our story. So it depends, it doesn't matter what it is. So even as people from the diaspora, I say, okay, African peoples, I've got an African Caribbean background, my parents are Jamaican, you know, and I'm doing my ancestry so I can find out directly where I'm from. But as African Caribbean peoples, you know, we have a particular story. People in Liverpool, Black Scousers, it's a particular swag, you know, different to everybody else. It's like everyone's unique in their own way. So I really want that to fly. I want that story to be told in many ways, and that presence to start being felt and seen, you know. So even like that picture, what was mistaken for New York, I want them to know, like Nikki did, that's Liverpool, you know. So then you can tap and see what else is in Liverpool, because there's so much went on, and I still think there's so much more to come. There's a whole generation of y'all and people, and if you know, as we continue to connect and create and tell our story and reclaim some of these things, reclaim this road that we're on to bring change and kind of this upliftment of our peoples, whether it's through art, through education, through all these aspects that we have to work through. I don't mind which ones we choose and which ones overlap, you know. It's how we kind of, like, as Maya Angelou says, still we rise, and it's that thing of rising up, you know, and doing it with joy. You know, we want our joy too. Clearly, our joy is important. I think our joy is a fuel for our survival, you know, and it's why whatever can foster that and bring that, and not to say, okay, there's some serious stuff going on, we still address all them. But if we haven't got a way to still go back home and foster our joy with our laughter, our dance, our art, all these creative things, we're not living, you know. So I'm kind of from that persuasion of, we still got to have all that to galvanise us, because we're still alive.
Exactly, and I think as well, like you're saying, it sort of brings that joy for us in many ways as well, like art, whether that's been movement, music, sort of dance. It's in our culture, it's in our blood, and it's a way of healing, right? It's a way of connecting on a spiritual level within a community. And it's
very powerful. It is, and it's very powerful, you know. Even with this place of Liverpool, you know, I always say right now, it's almost feel like the ancestors are calling, you know, and the ancestors are talking and raising up that spirit in the soul, because there's a kind of energy what's kind of lifted within people, you know. And I know, yes, people can talk about the happenings around the globe with George Floyd, Hasten and stuff, but it's a kind of catalyst for many things. But this energy of us, where we're just saying, it's time to do, you know, and ignore the haters, ignore the naysayers and all these people, because that energy's still there, and that's the trauma and the scarring, which I understand, and I think we're understanding that better, and we're not letting that kind of stagnate us no more. So in that way, that's what's kind of being freeing for me. And as I continue to link with people like yourself and other generations of people, that's being kind of really warming and refreshing to see this energy and connect with it. And as a diaspora, from people who come here, like I'm working with Caleb Brooks to the Liverpool African Diaspora Film Network. If I got it right, we're setting up a network. We're basically a network because we want to network. We want to work with with creatives, and same way as a creative, we've got all different disciplines. So we're not just like, oh, you make a film in whatever capacity, installation, whatever it is. We do many things. So I know it's not just going to be filmmakers. My thing is, if you're a filmmaker, you got something to show or whatever way, get involved, because I know we've got multidisciplines and we're going to connect on many other levels. So we've been working to set up this network, and it's going to be coming very soon. We've just received some funding from it, so as soon as that comes in, we can kind of promote that. And Metal Liverpool have been giving us some big support and gave us a venue right now to work through and stuff like that, to kind of get it off the ground and stuff. And it was part of this thing that we need artists to create, to connect, you know, as black artists. We need a space just to be. Yeah, absolutely. A space to connect, a space to be social, a space to show things. So like we in the case said, we want to be, even as a simple thing of having a space to show some of the things you make, getting a little critique from people, or just being in a place to just to be, you know. So we want to just have some social, so artists to just meet, you know, so we can just say, let's just meet, have fun and just chill and talk, bit of wine, munchies, whatever it is, just so we can watch these things and these nuances come about, you know. But if we're not connecting, it's very hard. So we're trying to do this thing on our level where we can connect people's and this whole and another creative level and build into what already exists. So it's not like we're trying to invent the wheel with anybody. It's just the energy we've just sparked up, and it was this thing about energy sparking up. We met and something sparked, and we're like, ooh, as I call it, what we call the black talk. We were just like, talk, and the energy was just general, and it was like, oh, we'll do this, and things have happened, and it's happened with many a thing in the city where people are developing. I'm seeing a whole range of stuff, you know, which is kind of warmed me, you know, whether it's Lawrence's appointments and the work that he's been doing around the history and heritage, you know. And I only throw these things up because they're things akin to me. I'm into my history and heritage and culture and stuff, so things like that will really zone it in my zone. But even, you know, you talked before about the importance of dance and performance, you know. One of the short films that I was keen to make when I found footage of she's my auntie, but it isn't just because she's my auntie Maxine Brown, who's done dance for 40 years, you know, and taught people, gone into schools and stuff, and the healing, the therapy of it. So I wanted to kind of honour her, you know, with one of these videos that I made. And it was nice when I saw Gopal's pass. Okay, my auntie hasn't passed, and, you know, auntie, respect, because this thing of lived, you know, honouring lived people as well as people who are past, because I just think, this thing that we do as even as artists, or in the art world of, they're all dead, and let's celebrate them. I'm like, what the fuck is wrong with that? You know, I just really don't respect that in a way. I understand people are canons and have passed and stuff, but you know what, we'll all be dead and canons eventually at some point. As I see it, it's going to be that way. So, you know, give some people their due respect and props while they're here, because some people are going to do some really great work, even if unsung before. If we can remember it or recognise it now while they're still here in their later years, I think that's really important. And I think that's where sometimes I say the artivism or artivism comes in, you know. It was to do with, like, I think it was Gina Belafonte came to talk at the museum, International Slavery Museum one year, and she mentioned this word, and I'm like, I kind of like that. And I guess for me, it was really how you mix art and activism. You hear Nina Simone talk about, you know, you use your art and your craft to progress yourself and your people and make your statements and stuff. So I'm not saying anyone has to be forced to do this. It's just, if that's whatever your story is, that's part of it. It's part of it for me, you know. So it's like when you'll see some of the images I make, okay, there's the ankh, you know. It's one of the key things when I was creating some images. I'm like, okay, the ankh, Kemet, Nubia, this whole new spin of looking at art, spirituality and culture. It's one of the reasons why I made it, because I liked it. It's images that I use, you know, and it's our cultural thing. So it's embracing that. And then even the conversations that I've had with people, what is that? You know, I can tell it's the first cross, you know. There's a whole history about this. So this way that you can engage and talk and communicate and share. And don't get me wrong, I'm not about having to educate people and share things. It's nice to talk and communicate because it's about sharing culture in that way. If you ask, okay, you don't know, you share it in that way. So I just express it because I like it, and some people see it as an image and you just like it. That's all good, you know, and it's a bit of history what can go with it. You know, some images, like I've got an image that I recreated of Nina Simone because I got to mention because she was a wonderful genius, you know, and the more that I learn about her, the more that I want to celebrate her, you know, and the things that people have done for us, with us, and continue the legacy of what they've left, you know, and stuff like that. So you'll see images, I make cards and some imagery. You know, some things are just some everyday people. I've took pictures of everyday people, like, can I take your picture? Can I turn you into a card? You know, and it's nice that, you know, some random girl who was just there reading the book one time in the park, and I'm like, do you mind if I take your picture? I snapped it already. But I'm one of those people. But she was gracious and said, oh, yeah, I could. And I still never got caught up with her, even though I sent her the email to say, I've used your pictures on a card. But when you see this girl, what I call Gail Read, it was just nice, you know, because it's the same thing. Oh, black people don't read. Of course we read, you know. So it's also things, that's why I say the artivism, challenge it in your own way. So even if this image means it counters somebody who don't often see black people reading, well, yeah, there's a girl reading. So, and I'm not to say I have to counter everything. It's just like, it's also to encourage us and promote our people. Look at this. This is you. All of these things are us, you know. So if I want to chill and not just flake out, well, that's me in a moment. If you want to do something creative and all these different things, these avenues are also us. So it's about kind of showing that. It's like with the cards, you know. I hadn't really seen many cards with Rasta. I've seen black people, but not Rasta women. My mum's a Rasta woman with locks. You know, how many people do I see with locks on a card? There's a whole lot more now, and we're all like, yo, we're just representing in many ways, which is all cool. But, you know, at the time, there was like a big groundswell of all like art, culture, and then we go in like pits and troughs. You know, our culture goes up and down. It's like we go up and we're like, we're rising and rising. We're going to go to this pinnacle, then it goes, something happens and we go down. So I've watched this little tide, and I saw it with even the cards and greeting cards. We could get them, and then suddenly they were all gone. You know, people stopped doing them. Like, where's all these black cards and stuff? And I'm like, So I'm like, okay, create your own. And it's the same thing when you talk about art therapy. I have to go back to that, because even how I got involved in akoma arts, you know, it was to move myself from one zone to another, from housing. I was depressed. I didn't like the job I was in. This whole arena, what we all do to ourselves for money, salary job, and I'm like, salary money, but oh God, it was killing me spirit. Literally didn't realise it was. Was depressed. I had to go make a change. So I literally went to go and do a photography course again in Blackburn House, Prop Studios. You know, it ignited my spirit and reminded me what I went to go, and that photography was the thing what got me doing video. You know, I was going to do photography back in the day, and I went to do a video and screen studies course and stuff like that. The passion of the teacher was cool. It just ignited a different thing, and the energy changed. Raspberry, give him a shout out. He always told me, oh, Michelle, go and I was just going to hang with him in the allotment and learn beekeeping. So he said, oh, go and learn a course, go and get some skills on it, and go and learn it officially. So I went to go and do that. Those two things changed my spirit and my energy, and that's how I started. I want to do this, akoma art, and not kind of look back since then. So it's been pretty cool, you know, in that way. And I don't knock anyone if you're a salary person. Job that you go for, every arena what we work in is valid, you know. So it's choose where you want to be and stuff like that, and just know what it feels like for you. So where it doesn't feel good no more, you can change it, you know. If it's not that, go to this, and you've got to be fearless enough to do that, you know, because the pressures and the stresses what you put upon yourself for things like we were talking earlier about monies, do we go on holiday, what you do with it, mortgages and all these things. They're not a problem if you want to have them, but it's the pressures and stress you put on yourself and what really resonates and leaves you with something more fulfilled. And having my time to do what I do and live in the way I live, being able to come and do a podcast like this, do art, live a bit more freer than I once did. So I'll admit I'm grateful for that, because I've worked in the institutions or worked salary jobs in the 9 to 5s, and I don't knock any of it, but I done that a lot till it killed my spirit. And then the choice of having the freedom to do you completely, that's what this whole arena is right now. Akoma has given me the freedom to do me in whatever way. So even broaden that out into, you know, doing some panel talks, just different areas what I've gone into, and even this network what we're setting up with me and Caleb, some of my own projects that I've been able to run, like Your Lens on LA, Politics of Plants, the work I've been involved in with Granby, CLT, and with the Winter Garden. You know, there's a whole thing in it. That's why I say even with activism, activism is actions that you can also do. You know, it's things you can incorporate into what you do as you are, but just living. So if you're in the community, how do you act in that community? What do you give back to that community? What do you do? There's some things we can actually do in addition, you know, and you get paid to do certain things, all good. Even if you get paid to help people like I did in housing or whatever, it's all good, you know. You've got your own creative space that you do. That's all good. That's you. Right. And it's also something that you've got to still have a commitment, as I say, as black people, to give back to your community in whatever way, small or large. Doesn't have to be something massive. Just contribute. Some of that contribution can be just going to things and supporting things.
Exactly.
You know, and people don't realise that's part of the activism, you know. So it's in whatever way. You know, I remember a friend of mine, me and Katrina, we set up the Liverpool Pan-African group. And it really just do like history groups, studies, just retouch with culture and heritage, and just what you didn't know, if you want to come to sessions on a Sunday, go and do that. And even that, you know, we did that for a while, and she produced these really good cards. You know, like just little cards about know your rights and stuff like that. Right. It's really things like that. So we'd actually done something, and she worked really well with Unison and someone else to produce them and give them out free because we needed them, you know. And even now when I see people and I've still got a few in my bag, I'm like, yo, bro, take this. You understand me? And the same thing, we've just got to interject and intercede. So that's why I say activism can come with your art and your creativity in your wider community. When you see things happening, stop and, yo, be that camera, be that person, you know, to do stuff. And we have to be active about it. Say a word, take down the police officer's number and the time and whatever else that you can take down to record these people, you know. So it can be the social things like that. It can be small things, man, you know, like you got these 25 confessions of my aunt where it tells you, you know, it's like where the 10 Commandments have come from, and it's like, oh, don't do this and don't do that, or no, it says basically I have not done this or I have not done that. So even one of the things where it says do not make people cry, you know, it's one of the things that as a guidelines of ways to live, you know. So there's some big profound ones, there's some small ones, but for me they're all profound in how you apply them. So it's little things like that. How do you live? How do you harm someone's life or not? You know, because even by not is activism, you understand me? And I know it might sound trite to some people, like, oh yeah, everything is, but everything really is, you know. It's really how you employ it. So even when I saw Gina Belafonte say, oh, artivism, because she's talking about art practice, so I'm like, so it's that. And I guess with me, with the art practice, I like to make art affordable, you know. That was one of the things I was just like, because I had to get over myself when I'm saying artist, because even this thing, I used to think art was really pompous, you know. I've watched these arenas, and there's a whole level to it, which, you know, it's got this own pompous and this high art and this highbrow way, So it's now learning, okay, that is there. I ain't changing that, but you can bring something different, and I don't have to embody that, you know. Not to how people try and put you in these boxes. I learn now, you know, props to Pauline Myers about just being yourself and embracing your own narrative and stuff like that. I went on this exchange with a bunch of black creative women, and we just talked about all these issues, and that's when the starting point to help me say, okay, go and do you, and really do you, and be unapologetic about it and stuff, because that was the one. So it's about doing all these things that we want to do, unapologetic, and expressing it, exploring it, and, you know, just enjoying it, you know, and just knowing that it's all, everything's valid now. You know, our thing is valid, and also not needing others to validate us, because this is the same thing when it comes to the highbrow stuff. This validation that people want. So I don't want to be pompous with it, and it's like, okay, step out of that arena, just be you in whatever way you want to be you, and you don't have to embody these things. Not say recreate the wheel, but recreate you. You know, whoever you want to be, and draw on what you want to draw on. And there's some things that are really good about everything. So also don't be so closed, because even though sometimes you can think, oh, pompous, and you can close off to certain things, you know. So it's just about having these avenues. And it's the same thing when I go to, Caleb always likes to talk about places and spaces, and many people do, and how we reclaim them. So it's the same thing. You're not going to reclaim them if you don't go in them, you know, like the Tates and stuff like that, or whatever it is. So it's the more things that we can do to have us engaged in them spaces with artists and other people, black artists and etc. That's going to make these things and these vibes change, you know. And also the respect to, you know, the respect to art in general, you know, because you don't have to just be Picasso and his cubism and blah blah blah. I mean, you know, it's came from African art. Do you understand me? So you'll say this, but you'll say it's primitive. You understand me? So my thing is about, you know, I'm looking back at our culture now, you know, I want to look at our images again and look at all these different things to be inspired again. You know, when I do my DNA, you know, I'll be like, I'm from here, and I'm going back to look at my actual people's art and culture specifically. You know, that's what it'll do for me once I kind of go on that journey, because Africa's so wide, it's a continent. So it's like, man, I've no joke about what country. It's massive. There's so much there. So even have a starting point and stuff like that and about how you explore yourself. I'm a Rasta child, so you'll see images of some images of like Africa and Marcus Garvey or different things. Well, why is that? And someone said, Michelle, make a Rasta Trinity for me. And I'm like, what's Rasta Trinity? I said, I know Marcus Garvey, I know Haile Selassie and Prince Emmanuel. I'm like, oh, okay. Done this image and I'm like, okay, he liked it. Ended up selling a few of them and they sell it kind of regular over in the States. So I'm just like, oh, the people in the States like that. Yeah, so that's really cool. And it's warmer when people buy your stuff, actually, even as a thing. Not like being egocentric, but I understand if your ego is balanced, it's nice to have your ego stroked within its context.
For sure,
do you understand me?
Sure.
As long as that, where it stops and stuff. So it's nice when people appreciate the thing that you've created and want to buy it and stuff like that. And I'm like, oh, in the States, it's nice when someone sees a card and goes, oh, those cards are nice, a difference. And what I realised, there's still scope for us all. Claire, do you understand me? Because people think, oh, there's only got to be one black person, one black in every arena. Now we're gone with them days. No. When they say fear of a black planet, public entity talk about fear of a black planet, well, it will be like that because when we see this enormity of all these aspects of us showing ourselves, you'll get to see it. And what it is, people have been buying into it and misappropriating it for years. Now it's going to be paid with more respect and respect due, and we're delivering it on ourselves. People can celebrate that with us rather than the other way.
Exactly.
I think there was only one artist I've ever watched when I watched all them music programs, and they're always showing about the heritage, and they talk about influenced by the black artists and blah blah. Like dance, let's say something with like rock and roll. People think, rock's not ours, rock and all this heavy metal and stuff. It's all come from this blues and whatever it is, Muddy and all these people.
Even language is like a lot of the terminologies that is used, a lot of the like slang that has been used. It goes back. It leads back to us. Everything's inspired from.
Yeah, right? And all it is now, if people actually honour and accept that and respect it, it's how you honour and respect people, and the treatment should be different. Do you understand me? How you really, if people start to really apply that, and that's why I say I even saw Carlos Santana was the only person I said, I say thank you every day to the African peoples who allowed me to make money off their culture. I never heard no one say it. Only him, and I'm just like, because they all do. But he said that, and so obviously I know you find a way to give back, and you do with people. He talks about what you showed them, but I don't hear many people pay the due respect to it openly, even when they're talking about celebrating and stuff and recreating it and stuff. So it's about that, and that should be how we change the world and change what people do and what we do. But ultimately, I'm really about uplifting us. That's what my ultimate aim is. We're a great people. People just don't know it. Some of us don't know it. We're all learning it, and I can't blame anybody because we've been through the propaganda, the slavery, the trauma, and we're unlocking all these things and just peeling back that. And when you start peeling back and seeing the Superman and Superwoman in ourselves and all these great people who just like, wow, she's great, he's great, they're boss, and you just sit back watching people. It's really not even a wonder to behold, because I hate saying a wonder because it's almost like, it's not supposed to be or something. But on the contrary, that's us. And that's what we're learning more and more. That's actually us. All of that's us. That's us too, and that's why I say it in every arena. I know they don't always promote all these technological advances that we make and do, but we're sharing them and putting them, so we're like, we made that, the chip, we made this, 3D, exactly. So it gives you that thing, that impetus again to create. And that's why when Marcus Garvey says, you are creators, it's about whatever helps tap people into that in whatever way. And that can be, you're seeing what Yamtri's doing with health, and food. So even that, I know I'm not knocking our food. My mum's a lovely Jamaican cook. They eat too much meat. But even to relearn what it is, because it's more healthy for us. I'm not saying we got to change overnight, but the different ways you can put things and put it into your system. So I love this whole range of where we're coming with. And as I say again, I love it as, I guess, a black Scouser, where we're coming as African Scouser, whatever you want to call me. Black Scouser, African kind of being all these labels, do me head in it a little bit. But ultimately, I love the expression of that and seeing what's to come and where we can go. And also, I have to say, because we've lived under these boundaries and these veils and glass ceilings and these subtle institutional racism, which really got to shift, and the gatekeepers. You know, there's been black gatekeepers that they've done things at self and ego, and when you do things too much for self and ego, it harms the wider benefit for the community.
There's no evolution, is there? It's sort of stunting that in many ways.
Yeah, and we've lived through that, and I've lived a generation of that, but I grew better from it, from what was there.
Yeah.
And a whole generation has missed out. And in spite of that, a whole generation has come, you know, and is doing stuff which I applaud, and I applaud it in spite of what we didn't give you. You know, and I always say, oh, my generation and the one that became the first generation before us are slightly at fault for not giving enough. Our parents and grandparents came and built and all done stuff and, you know, put all this vibrancy in, and we kind of went, what, just our individual self, and we didn't give enough. In Liverpool, other communities, I'm not going to speak for you because that's yours, but I'm just speaking about our one. So we've just got to give more. So to see people now doing it and doing it in spite of, I applaud that, you know, and all it is, what can we do now to support it? Because from time we're not dead. You can still do things to support. If you didn't do something yesterday, well, you can do it today. You can do it tomorrow.
It's never too late.
And I'm about that. So I don't condemn people. I just speak what I speak because of what I feel. Because we benefited. When I said, my nephew said to me, when we always talk about the Methodist and all these different places and what it was like in the big discos, and we've got these memories and we're all like laughing. He said, "But Auntie, we haven't got the meth in that way." And I'm like, "Oh yeah." And I realised we hadn't give them all these different things. Do you understand? And I'm like, wow. You know, so the generation that's had, we didn't actually pass that on. So now we've learned, now we can. And that's why some people are creative for themselves, which is all good. You know, sometimes you create some madness, but a bit of guidance, you can create all good things, but you create it nonetheless. And that's why I say, we still got to do it in whatever form. And that's why, I choose Akoma, I choose a Journal Productions, I choose myself as Reclaw 3. You know, I used to write a bit of poetry when I was ready, but I don't do that anymore. Not saying don't do that. It's more of a self-expression thing.
Yeah,
you know, when I decide to, well, I won't even say that because it's the same thing since meeting Amber Akanu. After the event with Ellis, when I met them, because the filmmaker thing came back into me, and I'm like, I've got this poem that I've wrote, and I've really wanted to have some film shot to it, you know. And I said, will you film it for me? I know she's a busy lady, and she's like, yeah. And I was just like, wow, please, I want you to film, because I saw some of her cinematography, and I'm like, please film me thing for me. And it's the same thing about expression, but what it can do. It's only a little poetry short, and it's all to do with, it was called LFC 8. Because it was when Liverpool won the title, it was all through George Floyd. It was George for COVID, and me and my brother went down to Anfield with everybody else, and it was 30 years on from when Liverpool last won the title, and me and my brother were like, "Wow, we're coming back from Anfield at 11 o'clock, and no one's calling us nigger, no one's running us down," and we're like, "What?" And we were like, if this was 30 years ago, would you think we'd be down here? He went, fuck off. And we were laughing. I'm like, fuck off. Sorry for the language, but we didn't. We just like, no, we wouldn't have been down here. And the whole experience made me have to go and kind of express it and write it. And that's why I say, in whatever way you choose to express yourself and write it, whether you write, you dance, perform, art, it came out for me this time in poetry, you know, and I'm just like, oh, let me write this down. So I wanted to get some images to do with it. So this is why I say, as much as people might know me for like the visual arts and this stuff, it's always about exploring your practice.
Absolutely.
You know, that's where I'm at with many things. And the more people you link with, you get to explore that in a nice, easy way, you know, and stuff like that. So that's me with my ramblings.
Cool. Well, I had two final questions for you. So the first question is, do you think that sort of artivism, so like art with activism, is a conscious thing? Do you think it happens naturally, or do you think it's something that needs to be a conscious effort to do?
Both. Truthfully, if on the first instance, just by who you be, and I like to use myself as an example. I'm a dark-skinned woman in Liverpool who embraces their own African culture and is proud of it. You know, it maybe wasn't always like that, but I'm there now. You know, so that even what that means at the whole diasporic level, you know, from the continent to my Caribbean to my Black heritage. So whatever it is, even when I'm doing stuff, it's naturally going to be expressed. It'll be expressed in the poetry, how I write it. Some of the images, like I told you, I mentioned the Ankh and some of the icons that I want to look at and choose and I want to venerate. I'm like, oh, I want to do them, you know. And then we all do our Bob Marley, which doesn't love Bob Marley, but you know, so I do a Bob Marley, and other things and people. Even the fact that I'm choosing pictures from local people and I'm putting them on a card, you know, or whatever. Just that you're cool to be on a card. So naturally. That happens naturally because it's just who you are as a culture, your background and stuff like that. You're just going to express who you are and it'll come out in whatever myriad of ways. And even the expression of your location, where you're at, you know, where you've been and stuff. So that does, artivism in that way comes naturally. But there's another way which obviously, it comes as a premeditated stance then. So if you want to make a certain type of statement, or you really want to incorporate something specifically about something into your art, even as a black person, well then you can do that. So I guess a twofold thing was when I done the Politics of Plants project, meeting Dr. Judy Augusto. She talked about how liquid knowledges now, knowledges from people can be, and African peoples in particular she was looking at, can be gathered from gardens, from plants, ecology, geology. There's a whole level of knowledge and understanding you can learn from our peoples through plants, you know. So I was just like, wow. And she just blew me away with it. And she looked at this enslaved African's garden, you know, and there was a symbol in there, you know, and it was a hidden symbol, and it's called a cosmogram. I'm like, what's a cosmogram? What's a dekenga? Because we're from Congo, so it was a dekenga. I was just fascinated by this whole thing, so I'm just like, what is that? So I went to go and explore that and do a whole project about it. And when I learned about it, it's like, basically, it's a way of looking at spirituality. Nothing ever dies. So you start as a child, you move to an adult, you go to an elder, and then you go to an ancestor. And the essence of you goes back, they believe, into the all, you know. So it's just this cyclical thing and the image of what it is, you know. If you see the image, it looks like a sundial or whatever, but it's an ancient symbol and image, and it used to be hidden in the enslaved Africans' gardens. So when it told you that them Africans knew they were from Congo, you know, it might have been hidden. There was plants and herbs. There's a whole knowledge what goes with it. So it's the same thing. I'm like, wow, that's just
fascinating.
Well, I thought it was, and I said, I want to make one of them. Let's explore that. So we done a project making small ones that you could take home. I made one as an ancestral one in the Granby Winter Garden, and my spin was they just made it out of like stones and stuff, and it was hidden. Well, our one's very open. You're going to see it, you know. So we're not hiding our culture no more. And this thing of healing, I wanted to have a healing aspect, so I'm into healing stones and crystals. So so we play with healing stones and crystals, so people could make their own small ones to take away, and we made the larger one with these massive stones and semi-precious gemstones from around the world, what we sourced as project, and that can be still seen in the Winter Garden. We hide under the plants because it just grows naturally in their garden, which I like. That's why I said that was a conscious effort, you understand me? So that's why I say in that way, for me, artivism can be a premeditated thought, you know, and stuff. And again, in a sense, it's still my African culture, and I've still explored in which part of the African ancestry and the continent. So in that way, it's still akin to its naturalness, but you can do things where you can have because my thing was, I wanted the people now to also learn about this, you know. Look at this symbol, what do you see? They all said, oh, I see a sundial. And I'm like, yeah, you see the cardinal points, but it's older than that. This was in Africa before even white people came to Africa. Look at this. So even this conversation that we can have and share in culture, I like that aspect of it. So I wanted to consciously share that. I consciously wanted to look at gardens and explore even this idea of looking at plants and knowledges that could be planted some plants in it on what was traditional to Africa, because Dr. Augusto always talked about the migration of plants and movement of plants and peoples and stuff, and what's naturally African, which you think is Africanism because it's being moved and migrated and stuff, and just this whole concept. So she's a wonderful lady. I hope we get a hit again now the Winter Garden's open. But so in that way, artivism can be a natural phenomenon. It can be something that you construct and create, you know, and imagine.
More of that. I think definitely even like reflect on my own sort of creative practice. I notice there's some things that are just naturally informed from my own experiences, from my own desire to fight towards anti-racism and things like that. But then I have that conscious effort where I go out there and I seek to sort of make a statement, to go and educate myself further and to do those different. So completely agree with you on that. So my final question is, what advice would you give to someone who might be listening or watching us and they want to explore sort of their multidisciplinary aspect of art, or perhaps they want to explore sort of their own culture when it comes to sort of intertwining that? What would you sort of say to someone who's like thinking?
You know, all it is, like I said to you in the beginning, I'm self-taught. I mean, I went to study media and cultural studies, and we had screen studies as the option, but it was all analog. So even when it came to digital, self-taught, you know. So my thing is, go and explore. You know, there's nothing wrong with going to learn about if you want to go to a course or anything like that, to just get skilled and not be afraid, you know, because I think that's one of the things we're all afraid of. You know, when I got past the thing, oh, I can't draw, you know, technically, in that way, like some people to different degrees, you know, it's just like, oh, what's going to stop you? Why you wouldn't make stop you? So, and it's this thing, what makes you feel good? So it's some of these things I always thought, what makes you feel good? So if playing, whatever form, even want to go, I want to go and learn some pottery now. You know, I just left Wayne at the studio in Grammy Workshop Studios, and he's just done a whole range of pottery. I'm just like, wow, you've been working hard, mate. And he's been inviting me, so I want to learn pottery. So my thing is, whatever it is that you've got a desire to do, go and research it a little bit. Go and see if there's any courses or activities going on, free or cheaply paid, you know, so you can just get it just to practice it. And don't be afraid to go and explore that and stuff, and do you. Do you unapologetically? I don't care what no one wants to tell you. Even if someone, oh, what are you doing that for? Like they always do and stuff. And I understand when people are like, that's not their road. Be comfortable doing you, because sometimes we're not comfortable just doing what we want to do for whatever the reasons is. Whether you're the mummy, someone says, oh, what are you being? You've got kids to do, or everyone's got a dynamic. Do you know why people will stop you from doing stuff? So I want people to, no matter where they are, who they are, whatever age they are, go and explore that. Because like we talked about earlier, it's never too late. So if you're an elder sitting there, don't be telling me, oh, I can't do this. No, just go and do it. If it makes you feel good, go and do it all the more. Absolutely. You know, that's one of the most important things. And, you know, what can I say? Just don't be put off, you know, because too many things, that thing of needing someone to validate what you do. So even me saying, oh, do this. Nah, don't listen to me because I'm talking through. Do what you feel in your soul and your spirit. Sometimes makes you feel like, have you ever been like, when you were a kid, you want to just run? I never remember, want to just run. I felt like this about a couple of weeks ago, and I felt like, are you being a tit? And I'm like, no, you just want to run. That feeling's over you again. I bomb down the street. So it can be something like that. It's I just want to sing. Go and find a course. You don't have to be the biggest singer or the best singer. Like I said, I'm a bathroom singer, you know, but I'm still going to sing, you know. I might think about joining a choir when Nina Ali said there's a choir that go, and I'm like, I might go and do that. So I'm about all these different things that you might want to do, you know. If I'm honest, I came from, I could say, I almost went into institutions and square world, you know. I always thank my sister, because she was always at, what was it called? Oh, CADT, where all these artists used to work and get to just explore their art practice, and you get paid and you're going to do it. And I was doing legal executives and accounting. I'd come for lunch with my sister, and I'm like, I like this art thing. So I'm like, oh, I'm dropping legal execs and I'm going to do media. I didn't get me photography course. I went to do media at John Moores instead. But it's that whole arena. And don't get me wrong, in that process of these 25 years, 30 years, I've gone and done housing, media, social, well, all these different little dynamics I've worked, and you've worked, and still at the creative thing underpinning it. It's just now that I've just gone to embrace the whole creative stance, and I'm like, oh, this is good. Is this why people do this? You know, this freedom and that feeling. I haven't got a cushion under me no more in the same said way. I haven't got the same things pulling on me. But, and it's just a different journey, you know, a different journey, a different experience. And it's, give yourself that experience. I don't care what it is. Give yourself a new experience. Even if it's outside your comfort zone, I don't care if it's unfamiliar, even better. Because when you get familiar, you turn around and you laugh about yourself and stuff like that. So even that, just, broaden these comfort zones and stuff like that. So that's my advice. If you can pick all that out, as my mum says, pick sense out of nonsense.
No, I think that was great advice. And I just want to thank you, Michelle, for your time. It's been actually like really interesting to hear about your story, all the projects that you've been involved with, future projects to come as well for the network.
Yes, definitely.
It's just lovely sort of speaking to someone like you and just really being able to connect.
Oh, thank you. You know, one of the things what's really nice still, platforms, you give us platforms to talk and share, and even just to have a platform to talk, and as you can see, I'm a talker. Just a platform to talk and share, which is really important and stuff, and it's about supporting what we all do. So thank you. It's mutual. Thank you.
So if you enjoyed that episode, be sure to give it a thumbs up if you're watching us on YouTube, and subscribe. If you give us a thumbs up, it lets us know that you're enjoying the episodes, and we have plenty more to come. So be sure to keep a lookout for that. If you're not watching us on YouTube, that means you're listening to us on one of our other platforms. So we are available on Spotify and Apple Music and other platforms like that. So if you're watching us on YouTube, be sure to check us out on that as well. Massive shout out to the LVP Online for allowing this podcast to take place, for all the resources and support with that. I really, really appreciate it. If you want to keep track of things that I'm doing and all my creative projects, my social medias are Claire Beardraz, and I'm literally on every social media, so I'm sure you can find me in some way. But again, thank you, Michelle, for your time. We really appreciate it.
You too, sis. Bless.
Thanks.
Thank you.